Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Thomas Morledge. I'm the lead rigger at Frontier Developments, and I'm joined today by Principal Technical Animator Luke Maskell. So we're here to talk about how we rigged over 200 unique animals in Planet Zoo. So as a bit of background information about us at Frontier Developments, Frontier is 26 years old, having been founded by David Braben back in 1994. We're the UK's largest independent game studio with over 600 staff, and we're based in Cambridge, though, as you might expect, most of us are working from home at the moment. You might know us from our more recent games, including Elite Dangerous, Planet Coaster, Jurassic World Evolution, and of course, Planet Zoo. So, given that we're going to be talking about Planet Zoo today, we've got a trailer here to just give you a bit of a feel for what Planet Zoo is. So let's watch that now. So, Planet Zoo. Hopefully you enjoyed that trailer. So we had some experience working on similar games in the past, games such as Zoo Tycoon, which was a launch game for the Xbox One, Connectimals, and of course Jurassic World Evolution. Planet Zoo was a bit different in that we really wanted to have so many animals in this game. We wanted to have over 50 animal species, each including a male, female, and juvenile. We wanted everything from your lions and your bears, your giraffes, your very sort of classic zoo animals, to your exhibit animals, the likes of iguanas, frogs, really everything you could think of, which is obviously very ambitious. And it was really important to us that the animals were like the stars of the game. We wanted to make sure that they were the most realistic animals that's ever been in games. So we had our work cut out for us, basically. The problem with this was immediately quite obvious, given that we'd recently worked on Jurassic World Evolution, where we'd rigged around 60 dinosaurs in almost 2 years. Obviously, we're now looking at rigging over 200 unique animals in around the same time frame. Something had to change, especially given that there's a lot more variety in the animal kingdom than in dinosaurs. Now, dinosaurs are great. You've got everything from your T-Rex to your tiny compies. But when you compare that to the differences between a peafowl and a giraffe, or a crocodile and a gorilla, it's very clear that there's a lot more variety in the animal kingdom. It was obviously just going to take us way too long to rig all of these. So there were a few possible solutions to this. We could cut animals from the game, but nobody wanted to do that. If anything, we wanted to add more. We could compromise on the quality of the animals, but that was never really an option. We knew that the animals were going to be the star of the show, and it was very clear to us that every one of these animals was going to be somebody's favorite animal, and we wanted to do that justice. So we could also hire more riggers, and we did eventually, but hiring riggers, it takes time. There's no guarantee that you're going to find enough people because we have high standards. So the other option was to rethink how we were creating our rigs, which, as you may have guessed, was the solution we went with. So if we look at our time on Jurassic World Evolution, we were rigging every dinosaur manually. So the way we'd do this is we rigged the components for limbs separately, and then we'd import them into the dinosaur rigs, and kind of implement them with scripts based on positions of locators. We got really good results out of this, and we were very proud of these rigs. But it was time consuming. And it introduced other issues, like if you want to update a limb, so you make a change to the way a leg works, for example, you have to go through and manually recreate every rig if you want to roll that out to them. It was just very, very time consuming. And we encountered issues like resizing a rig took almost as long as building the rig from scratch. It was clearly not going to work for us with so many rigs to do. Not to mention the fact that by importing these components into scenes, we were dragging through nodes from scenes made years ago in some cases. As I mentioned here, we found nodes in our scenes that were from rigs that were made 5 years earlier. So every scene was just a bit bloated with all these extra nodes that we didn't really want to be in there. Not to mention the fact that because every rig was made manually, it was really hard to share work between our riggers. So if something needed doing on, say, a Triceratops, but the person that originally rigged that Triceratops was really busy, it couldn't easily be handed off to a different rigger. So that was something we really wanted to address.
Yeah, so on Jurassic World Evolution, we started working on a script-based procedural solution. There was a library of Python code, and we'd have some input data, say a skeleton, and a build order, and we would generate the rigs procedurally with just code and not have components in folders rotting away, so we could maintain a code library. This was an object-oriented setup, so we define like what is a rig part, and then say, okay, this is a different type of thing, this is a different part. I'll get into more technical details in a minute, but so we established the fundamentals of what the rigging system was, and we built up from there. So at this point, the build scripts themselves were getting like a bit out of hand, really, really big, like 10,000 lines of code just to build a rig in certain instances where we'd be copy and pasting, and it was a bit like the Wild West of scripting, too messy. And for anyone not working on that rig, it was pretty much impenetrable to get through that code. So we needed a friendly way of putting these construction scripts together without having Python experience, effectively, or but also being able to like share stuff around. So we needed a UI. This is what we come up with. Anyone with experience with something like Unreal's Blueprint editor will be familiar with this kind of thing. You have nodes, you connect stuff together, and it behaves in a certain way. So this was effectively our UI for creating our build scripts. So as a quick example, or a few examples of how this kind of thing works, we might have an FK control, for instance. So we have a joint and an offset and a control to control that joint. So this is what it would look like in our rig builder tool. So we have a joint inputs into a component, and then when we build it, it controls it. Easy peasy. So something like 2 FK controls that you want them to behave in a certain way, so one a child of the other. You construct it up, assemble the order. Once it builds, then we have one child, one parent relationship here. So you might think that's a bit overkill for just a couple of FK controls, but then we start to get into more complex objects like an FK chain of n-length bones. Say it's 1,000 bones. If you wanted to make that manually, that would it's a lot of work. So we can just create a component that will procedurally build that FK chain with a start and an endpoint. and we'll get a nice FK chain set up with that. So once you start layering on the complexity with each of these components, then we can add more and more features. So let's take something like a leg. Now, a leg is, on the face of it, not too complicated, but actually in terms of rigging, there's a lot of features that go into a leg, like a really good leg system that the animators kind of expect. So what is a leg? So firstly, it's a bunch of bones, okay? So we got the upper leg, lower leg, a foot, toes. We actually have a helper bone in here as well for assistance with the foot roll. So in this instance specifically, it's a 2-bone leg, not like a horse that has, say, an extra bit with the heel to help with different behavior. So what did we need to do to create a 2-bone leg for this chimpanzee leg here? What features need to go into it? So we've got an IK chain, an FK chain, blending skeleton between those two systems, some foot roll, stretchy IK, twist bones, custom toe IK solution for ground contact. There's a lot in here that is very feature rich, and to be able to make this manually for every leg without a procedural system for the whole game would have been mad. That would have been maybe 2 years worth of work for one person just doing legs, for making this stuff manually. So having a procedural system was really critical for us to be able to say, this is the skeleton layout and input, and off you go. So here's the leg layout for in the rig builder. So we have a input node that is the 2-bone leg, or a construction node, all the inputs that are the bones, and there's some extra stuff to say, like, I'll do some parent constraints, add some twist bones, space switching stuff. We can add that layer of complexity as we need it. And then here's the rig. This is the kind of stuff that comes out of that.
Yeah, so this is all about sort of laying the groundwork with our simple components, such as an FK control, to then building it up. And we were doing all of this work in our scripts originally, and then we've now implemented that into components in the UI. So as Luke demonstrated, we can really quickly and easily generate a leg component just by plugging some nodes into it. Now, the logical extension of that is to then building an entire rig. So believe it or not, what you're looking at here is an elephant. So there's a lot of nodes here, but with a push of a button, we can go from this, a simple skeleton file, which is just the geometry and the bones, to a fully feature-rich rig here, including our hit check capsules. You can see some cones here for our IK system. Obviously, all of our controls have all been generated. The skinning's loaded on. The face poses are loaded on. This is a finished rig that is generated with one button press. And then we run another script, which simply cleans out a lot of the extra rigging stuff and just leaves what we call an anim file ready for the animators, which it just has the geometry and the rig. Which then obviously then gets handed over to our animators, and they can create lovely work like this. So these are a couple of animations that are in Planet Zoo. So this system, it wasn't just something that we wanted. It was really something that we needed to have. It was so important for us to be able to create so many rigs so quickly, meaning that we would never be starting from scratch. So we'd always have a rig structure in the rig builder and a skeleton file that we can pull from for any other rigs, be that rigs in the same animal family, or whether we're going from something like a crocodile to a giraffe. You know, the fundamentals are there that we can use, and it just saved us so much time. It really was vital that we had this. So what did this allow us to do? It allowed us to really rapidly and iterate and fix problems. If we ever found an issue with one of our components, we'd simply fix it in the script, and then we could regenerate all of our rigs really quickly and easily and solve all of those problems. Furthermore, our graduates were able to pick all of this up really quickly. It's just connecting nodes to generate these rigs, or in many cases, just editing an existing rig structure. And the rigs that they were creating with this were on par with the rigs that myself and other senior riggers were making in just a couple of weeks. It just allowed us to really hit the ground running with everybody that joined the team.
Yeah, it was really good that all the knowledge and the skill of creating these high complex rigs was embedded in the Python libraries, so that when we are setting juniors off building stuff, they can pull from all the embedded libraries, and they don't have to know necessarily how everything works. So they can focus more on skeleton placement, skinning, all the stuff that needs a bit more artistic eye rather than the technical details. And then as they've come on, they've learned a lot more about these underlying systems.
Yeah, we really encourage everybody to look at the scripts that are building these components and look at the finished product as well. Look at how all these nodes are connected to generate these components, and everyone builds up that foundation of knowledge. So, taking stock of where we're at with this system, our process for creating a rig was now to use an existing similar skeleton file and rig builder file, which is the node system that you're seeing there, as a starting point. We would reposition the joints for the new animal, make any adjustments to the rig builder structure, generate the rig at the push of a button, adjust any control shapes, skin the geometry, and then do any final polish, such as face poses, IK ragdoll cones, and game setup. So we are able to do this in a very simple process, and we are now creating a unique rig in roughly 3 days. And most of that time was spent skinning, which is really something that you need to spend the time doing. So we're really able to make the most of our time. But of course, there's more to getting an animal in game than just creating the rig. All of these animals, these hundreds of animals, need to be animated with incredibly extensive movesets, including everything from running, walking, jumping, swimming, climbing. You get the idea. There's so much animation in this game. And our animators are fantastic, but they would still be animating the base game today if we didn't find a way for them to generate animation on hundreds of animals really quickly and easily. So we worked with our animation programmers to develop this animation retargeting tool. So Luke, do you want to take this away?
Yeah, so we ended up with a tool set embedded in one of our internal tools that allowed us to map one skeleton animation to another skeleton animation. So say you've got a zebra walk and you've got a gazelle that you don't have any animation on yet. You can generate a mapping between the two and transfer the animation. So this is a zebra walk cycle mapped to a Thompson's gazelle, and we can now basically save this out and say this is ready to go, and we can get the rigs in game walking around with no animation input at this point. So really useful to get at least a baseline level of animation. And for things like moving animation from, say, a male to a female, it's pretty much free if they're animating the male set. It also allowed us to do some really funny things like have the zebra walk on an elephant. So we could, it would work. We could transfer it across, and then you could get really silly with it. This just proves how robust the system was. So let's say, grizzly bear. What should we pick? Let's go. Fight taunt. Yeah. Map to an elephant. And it comes through. But this system was fundamental for us to be able to get as much animation in the game as possible and allow the animators to focus on the polish.
Yeah, and this system was more than just playing an animation on a similar skeleton. It does really intelligent. I mean, this is great. I mean, this is why we made the system, so we could have a bear animation playing on a Galapagos tortoise. The system takes into account differences in size to retime animation. So if you've got the animation of a much larger animal playing on a smaller animal, it can adjust the timing of it so that it still makes sense. So it's a very intelligent system, and we had tools embedded in there to allow us to do things like change the way it handles the data. So we can make sure that our feet are still contacting the floor correctly in the foot planting. We could have some bones act in FK rather than IK. So it really was an intelligent system that allowed us to generate a huge amount of animation really, really quickly. And a really great feature of this was that we could, as riggers, we could generate these rigs, run it through the animation retargeting system, and create our animals in game without it even getting in the hands of an animator, allowing us to look at deformation, look at how it's behaving, and start solving these problems before they even go to animation. So it really was sort of the holy grail for us riggers to be able to get our rigs in game so quickly and easily.
So something else that we can do from this system is take the animations that are converted across to the target animal and get that animation back out. So we can get the raw animation data, and something the animators wanted to be able to do was bring it back into Maya to then be able to polish that animation or add some flourish to it. So something we had to come up with a sensible and not time-consuming way of doing this. Okay, similar to sort of mocap systems where you're importing animation onto a character rig, we came up with a dynamic solution to do that. So we have a target animation, the model export, and the rig that is targeting to, and it will generate an automatic map between the FK controls. This is effectively mocap data is what we're bringing in. So mapping to IK can be problematic. But yeah, they could import the animation and then save that out as their actual Maya signal and work into that animation. Yeah, this was really, really useful for if they had, say, an animation of a creature that was entirely retargeted, but they had to do like a little flourish just for, say, a juvenile version or a female variant. They could bring in that animation, work into it, and then export it, and off it goes.
Yeah, it was a really useful tool to allow our animators to spend their time wisely. So it may be that the retargeting system generates an animation that is close to what we want, and then they can work into it and just give it a bit more of a more flavor, make it more specific to that animal, especially kind of targeting the areas where it's going to make a difference to the player. So it's a really, really useful tool, not just for solving problems, any issues that the retargeting may have come across, but also really rapidly generating animation and then working into it. So it really was a very, very useful tool. So bringing everything together with our systems, we were able to very quickly generate incredibly consistent rigs and rapidly iterate over them to solve problems and really to save everyone just countless hours of work, not just us in the rigging team, but the animators as well. We were able to reduce our time spent on each rig dramatically, down to just 3 days in a lot of cases, without compromising on quality, something that was really very important to us. And we're able to see our rigs animating in game immediately. Like I say, what an amazing feature to have. It's such a powerful tool for the riggers to be able to do that, and it really was very, very useful. And I think most importantly, we're able to spend our time where it makes a difference to the player and to the game, not just the riggers, but the animation team. It's something we think about a lot in terms of where we want to spend our time. And we really want to make sure that everything we're doing makes a difference to the player. And this let us spend our time skinning and improving our ragdoll features, really making the most and creating the best quality game assets. And for our animators, being able to spend more time in these lovely moments of interaction between the animals. So these unique moments that really make an animal stand out, rather than having to spend just untold hours animating another very, very similar walk. So it made a huge difference, and made the game possible, really. So yeah, that really was how we rigged over 200 unique animals for Planet Zoo. It was a great project to work on, and I think we all really enjoyed it. There's a lot of animal lovers in our team, so yeah, it was a pleasure to work on. Any closing thoughts, Luke?
No, well, yes. It was, considering where we were for Jurassic World, it's amazing how far we've come to go from a system of manual rebuilding and the amount of headaches we had when, say, a dinosaur got resized or minor things would change, where we would have to pull the rig apart, plug it all back together again, and where we are now, where we say, okay, if a character team come back and say, this is slightly different, we want to change like the length of the spine, we want to like make these legs bigger, we can say that's fine. There's no trouble because the iteration time is virtually nothing. We can make the adjustments in the skeleton, rebuild the rig. They're happy they got the changes they wanted. We're happy because we haven't got to do all the work to pull it all apart. Animation are happy because the rig is so consistent that it will come through with minimal changes anyway. So it's like we've got this whole fundamental system where we can build rigs super easy, and it's actually just fun to work on without having to think about like random stretchy arcade solutions all the time. So yeah, it's great. It's great to work on, and it's really great to see our graduates come in, learn how to like the context of the systems that they're building, and then they're off scurrying away working on the library under the hood to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. I hope that was informative and enjoyable, and yeah, thank you very much. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.